Welcome to Live DAF, your online DAF Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem, welcome back to today's DAF. Bava Metzia Samach Zayin. We got up to the 11th line off the top of the Amid. We begin with a story. There was a story of this woman, the Amrle. She instructs this fellow, Lau Gavra, Zil Zavanli Ara, Mikrivai. Can you please purchase for me a piece of property from my relative? Ozal, the fellow went along, Zavanla, and he purchased the property on her behalf. Amar Le, so the seller tells the agent, Zuzi Mahadras Lonieli. You know what? I want to stipulate the following condition. If I get around to having some funds down the road, I want her to return the field to me. Okay? Are you accepting that condition? Amar Le, so the fellow says, look, I'm not getting involved. At you, but Navla and her, the woman that sent me, according to Segam Shat and Rashi, Navla was her name. So you and her, you're achi, you are relatives, cousins, or whatever. Deal with her, deal with her directly. Take care of it. Basically, I'm not getting involved. So he was sort of, like going along with it. Amar Rabba Barav Hunam. He says like this: does the condition stick or not? Right? Is there is the sale dependent upon this clause? Is it a legal condition? Kol at v'navla achei. Yeah, when a fellow responds in this manner, she'll strain it out with you. Amar some chadaite. It's said, and it's something that he relies upon. V'loy gamar umakni, and the fellow is not willing to actually, give it away unequivocally. Basically, he is relying on this to come to fruition. So basically, he's selling it on this condition. So now, Ara, if he comes up with his money down the road, Hadra, he gets back the field. Peri mai. What about the peiros, the produce that she had all along? Does that go back to the seller or not? Why yes and why no? Ribis ketzutza havu v'yotim b'dayanim. Do we consider it as defined ribis ketzutza, ribis da'iraisa, because after all, it turns out to be not much of a sale here. If he's expecting it back as soon as he gets his money, gets access to money, so it's not much of a sale. So essentially, the money that was paid out is almost like a loan, right? The money that the Isha gave to this landowner is almost like a loan. It's treated like a halva. And any pairs that she had all this time, until he got around, until he got access to more funds to redeem his property, until that point, what she's taking is like ribis. It's a fee for him using her money. So that's one side of the coin. That's one side. One way to look at it. It's ribis ketzutza havu. It's absolute ribis v'yotzim b'dayan, and you can actually compel her to repay this. As per the halacha we paskin the other day, that ribis da'iraisa can be extracted through the court, through the dayan. Or no, ki avak ribis havu. It isn't considered ribis ketzutza. It's just a dust of ribis, meaning it relates to ribis. It's just another way of referring to ribis de rabbanon. Because we'll see in a minute why it's not regarded as true ribis. And as a result, we say ve'ein yotzim b'dayan, and you can't. Dayan cannot force him to repay it, or in this case, her, right? Her to repay it. So which way? Amar Rabba Barav Huna mistabra. I think ki avak ribis haba. We treat it like avak ribis, merely like ribis d'Rabbanan. Ve'ein yotzim b'dayan, and cannot be forced to pay back. V'chein Amar Rava ki avak ribis haba ve'ein yotzim b'dayan. And likewise, Rava concurred to this point that it's only avak ribis, and she will not be required to pay it back. And again, soon the Gemara will explain why, why in fact it's only Ribis D'Rabbanan. Amar le Abaye le Rabba. Before we get to that point, comes Abaye and says like this. Amar le Abaye le Rabba. Mashkanto mai. What happens if somebody lends, an unrelated question, somebody lends money and the person gives him a field as a mashkin? He didn't specify what to do with the peiros in the meantime. And the Malva just took the field and started using it. He developed it, he invested in it, and he ate the peiros. Shall we say that the peiros that he had is ribis ketzutza and can be forced out, or is it just avak ribis which need not be returned? Mashkanta mai, right? So the produce that he took off the collateral, what's the status of that? So let's compare it to the previous din, the case where the seller stipulated that he has the right to buy back the karka, and in that case Rabbi Barafuna just told us that any pairs that the buyer ate in the interim is only avak ribis, and right. So let's compare the two cases. What's the reason why in the previous case, with that sort of pending sale, do we say it's only avak ribis? Is it because the loy katzle, because they didn't stipulate at the time of sale? They did not stipulate that the isha, who's the buyer, will have the peiros as payment for money sort of being lent to the other fellow. There was no tzitza. It wasn't definitive. It wasn't specified. Hachanami lekatzle, here as well. Nobody clearly told the lender, right? In the case of the mashkin, nobody clearly told the lender that he's going to take the peiros as a fee, as payment, as a schar for the money being loaned. Therefore, it's not called ribis ketzutza. Or you can say like this: Hasam zvinya chalva. In the previous story with the isha, with the cousin there, after all, it was a sale, right? The fellow got his money as officially as payment for the field that he was selling. It turns out later on that he's going to go rebuy the field, right? But it wasn't really meant as a loan; it was meant as a sale. So there we say that any benefit received on the side is not called ribis ketzutza, but hacha halva, here he's actually lending money and offering his field as a mashkin. So even though there was no, clear stipulation that you will be picking the fruit as ribis, but after all, that's what's happening. He's benefiting from a loan. So which way is it? Is it the lack of ketzitza, or in which case it would be mutter, or is the heter over there because it's part of a sale as opposed to this case? Amarle, he says, Hasam time mishum lekatzle, hachanami lekatzle. The point is ketzitza. Just as in that story with the isha, with the cousin, it was okay because it wasn't clearly stipulated as ribis payment. Here as well, by the mashkin, it's mutter. It's not called ribis ketzutza because it wasn't, clearly stipulated as part of the arrangement. Amra Papi Avad Ravina Uvda. Actually, such a story came to Ravina, where a fellow sold a property on condition that he can buy it out, that he can rebuy it when money becomes available, and the buyer was benefiting from the produce from the field all along. So Ravina had a story like that. And how did he proceed? V'chashiv, and he calculated v'apik peri, and he forced the fellow to give back the peris. Unlike Rabbi Barafuna, who says you don't have to. He held you have to do it, even though the fellow was sort of like meichel on it. It's a toes. He had no right to take it, and he deserves it back. Amar, Mar Breid Rav Yosef, Mishmei Rava. Ha-mashkanta. So once again, the mashkanta entails a fellow committing his field as sort of a collateral, or to be applied as partial payment for a loan that he's receiving. Now, there were basically two types of mashkantas. One was called ba'asra delay misalki. So in this place, the common practice is not to be misalik. Misalik means that if the leiva, the borrower, comes up with money, he can buy back his field. He can sort of get rid of the malva, remove the malva off the premises. He can buy back the field. That's asra de misalki. Asra de lei misalki means that you can't, even if the leiva comes up with money, the leiva cannot chase the malva off the field during let's say he borrowed $1 million for 10 years, right? So he has no right, and he gave him the field for 10 years as a mashkin. He has no right to chase him off the field. Even if he comes up with his money before the 10 years are up, the malva sits on that field until the term is up. Right? That's asra delay masalki. And what happens after the 10 years are up? It goes back, the field goes back, the property goes back to the borrower. And interestingly, Rashi says there's no issue of ribis there, because it looks like a sale. It's like he sold him the property for 10 years. And even if the fellow was benefiting and taking the produce, it's his. The malva owns this property for 10 years. After 10 years are up, so when the fellow comes and pays back the $1 million loan, so it's like he's rebuying his field. It's like he's buying that field. There's no element of ribis at all. So again, there were two types of mashkins, property mashkins. One is called mashkanta delay masalki. Asra, a place where they have this minhag delay masalki, they do not give the leiva the right to take his field back during the prescribed period. So he borrowed $1 million for 10 years, and he, Shimon offered his own field as a mashkin to Reuven. Reuven takes that field for 10 years and sits there until the 10 years are up, after which Shimon, repays that loan and he gets back his field. It's like he sold it to him now and he's rebuying it in 10 years. Then there was a system called Asra de Masalki, a place where they have a minhag to be masalik, which basically means that if Shimon comes up with the money within that 10-year period, he has a right to buy back his field, to sort of remove the malva, to remove the lender, to force Reuven off the field, and now the field comes back to him. Which is a bit more problematic, because now it doesn't appear like a sale. It looks clearly like a mashkin, like a collateral, meant sort of to secure that loan, right? So what right does Reuven have to eat the payers all along? It's like he's taking a fee. It's like getting paid for the money that he loaned to Shimon. Okay, so we'll see in a minute how this works. So he's quoting Rav as follows. Hamashkanta. So this property collateral, ba'asra de masalki, in a place where the common practice was to allow the leiva. So Shimon borrowed $1 million from Reuven. Shimon handed his field over to Reuven as a mashkin, and it's a place where they allow Shimon to be masalik Reuven off that field as soon as he gets a hold of funds. So now, ba'asra de masalki ochal shir zuzi. So let's say Reuven, by the time Shimon came up with the money, Reuven had already taken $1 million of produce off the ground. Right? Shir zuzi misal kinele. So at this point, you can force him off the property. Look, you got paid out, you're done. You have no right to take more. That would constitute ribis, right? Achat fei. Here's the chiddush. But let's say he ate more. He ate 1.5 million of bananas off that field, which is 500,000 more than he deserves. We can't force him to repay. Do you know why? Because it's avak ribis. This whole arrangement is not a clear-cut ribis. Nobody knows. It's unpredictable. Nobody knows how much he's going to make off the field, how much he's going to invest. I mean, you have good years, bad years, fruitful seasons, and you have storm seasons. I mean, you have all kinds of phenomena. So it's not an outright ribbis. It's not a predictable. It's not a clear-cut, defined, stipulated ribbis. At most, it's avak ribbis. Right? So even if he took more than he deserved, we can't force him to return it, because that's the halacha that avak ribbis is ein yaitza b'dayan. You can't force him to repay it. And likewise, we can't calculate it as a credit for another loan. Let's say Shimon has another loan with Ruvain, mishtar from one document to the other. So the extra $500,000, you can't apply it as credit to another loan, because again, you have no right to extract avak ribbis. Once he took it, he took it. But Ubadi asked me, let's say instead of it being Shimon to Ruvain, it was Yisayimim, youngsters, orphans, who are under the charge of Bezdin. They're the ones that borrow the money, and they're the ones that handed the mashka to Ruvain. So once again, once Ruvain gets to the point of the $1 million mark of income off that field, we remove him off the field. Here's the chiddush. If he took more than he deserves, we will force him to repay it. We can apply the credit to another loan that the Yisayim have towards Ruvain. And the reason here is because Bezdin's authority reigns here. They're in charge of the Yisayim. They look after them. And it's as though we treat it as though they have already removed Ruvain off the field as soon as he hit that $1 million mark. It's like sort of an ongoing directive of the Bezdin. Take only as much as you deserve. So anything more than that is like stealing from the kids. Okay. Omar Rav Ashi. Now Rav Ashi takes issue with one point. Now that you've told me that if Ruvain, under ordinary circumstances, you have a Shimon and a Ruvain, no Yisayim, ordinary people, and Ruvain took more than he deserves off the field, more than the total amount of that debt. We can't force him to repay it because it's avak ribis. Here comes the punchline. Here comes a chiddush. Says Rav Ashi, guess what? On the same token, just as if you take more than he deserves, more than the $1 million loan amount, you can't force him to repay it because it's only avak ribis. Guess what? Even the actual $1 million, he can just pocket and walk away. Now, even if he took the $1 million worth of bananas, you can't force him off the field. We don't deem it as though he was repaid. But without actually, can't force him off without actually repaying the loan, separate, on top of the $1 million that he reaped off the field. You know why, my timer? Because after all, the bananas that he took is avak ribis. My time is saluki because if we'll force him to relinquish control of the field, but without actually paying him out, giving him the $1 million payment right now, apuki minei how? What? Right. Based on what are we forcing him off the field? Because of the bananas that he took? But that's avak ribis. So, by forcing him to apply those bananas to the loan and calling it a day, right? Canceling the loan because of the bananas that he ate is basically, essentially, forcing him to pay for avak ribis that he ate. It's like you're taking it away from him. You're forcing him to repay that avak ribis that he took. How avak ribis? It's really only avak ribis. Avak ribis eino yoytze b'dayan. You can't force a malva to repay for avak ribis. So it's a gewaldige chiddush as Rav Ashi. Shimon borrowed $1 million from Reuben. He let Reuben have his field temporarily as a mashkin. Reuben reaped and reaped and reaped. Picked and harvested. Till he got to the $1 million mark. Says Rav Ashi, guess what? Too bad. You can't force him off the field until you actually now go and pay him $1 million, because essentially what he took is avak ribis. It's gone. It's swallowed down. It's finished. He has no chiv to repay that. In fact, Rav Ashi in fact proceeded to apply his opinion, his ruling. He had a story regarding Yisayim Ktanim, where the Malva ate from the karka, and he said no, they can't get it back. Even if the fellow ate $1 million worth of bananas, doesn't matter. Yisayim Ktanim are treated just like Gedolim, regular adults. Fact is, it's avak ribis, even though Bezdin is sort of in charge, doesn't matter. The fact is, the fellow took avak ribis, it's gone. Amar Rav Abreder of Yosef, Mishmed Rav. Hi Mashkant, again back to the Mashkan setup, right? Ba'asra de Mesalki. We're in a place where the common practice is that the loiva has a right to pay out the malva and force him off the land. So in this case, as we explained before, there's an appearance of ribis. It relates to ribis because it's not really a done deal. It's sort of, everything's pending, right? So Reuven's hold on that property is sort of like only a temporary hold, and by him taking the payers, it looks like ribis as payment for the money that he lent. So the only way it's legal, the only way it's acceptable is b'nechyaisa, by deduction. Rashi explains. Basically, he should have an arrangement with the borrower as follows. Look, every year that I have your property, I'm going to deduct $1,000 off the loan. And as Rashi explains, although he could end up benefiting more than 1,000 off the field, but it's unpredictable. There are some good years, some bad years, and it's okay, right? Because he's also taking a chance. He's also risking his investment. You never know, he might only make $100 off the field. So again, as Rashi points out, if it's Asra Deloy Salki, again, that means that for the next 10 years, Reuven sits on the field, unbothered by Shimon, right? Loy Misalki, you can't buy him out, you can't force him off until the term is done. In that case, there's no issue of ribis. Rashi says it's a mechira, it looks like a mechira gemura. It's like it was sold outright to Reuven for 10 years. There's no issue of ribis. Whatever he takes is his, right? The whole issue begins because it's Asra de Mesalki. In this place, the minhag is that the leva will have the right to remove Reuven, the malva, off the field whenever he's able to, whatever he has the ability to do so, whenever he can access funds, and right. So in this case, it's not really a sale. Reuven is sitting there as a malva, as a lender, in possession of a collateral. It's a temporary arrangement. So now whatever he takes is like a ribis. Oh, how do we avoid that? B'nei chaysa, deduction system. Deduct a set amount every year and apply it to the loan. But that's regarding an ordinary person. But a Talmud Chacham has to be more careful and set higher standards to avoid any appearance of impropriety. He should not even proceed with this deduction system because it still has, it gives somewhat of an impression that he's eating ribis. And people might, stretch that and apply it to real ribis, right? So the only way that a Talmud Chacham can proceed is b'kitzusa, which the Gemara will soon explain, which totally removes any impression of ribis. Well, that's good if you hold that kitzusa system is perfect. If you hold that kitzusa is also problematic, Michael, so what's the way to go, right? The Itmaz we learned. Kitzusa. What about this kitzusa arrangement? Which the Gemara will explain for us soon. We have machlekes Pligibar Avach Ravina. There's machlekes between these two Amiroim. Chad Amar kitzusa Sharia. One says it's mutter. Chad Amar, the other one says kitzusa Asira, it's Asr. So if you hold that it's Asr, so which system can a Talmud Chacham employ? Now, before we get to that, what exactly is this kitzusa arrangement? Shimon borrowed $1 million from Reuven, and he turns around and offers him a piece of property. The Amalei says like this. So Reuven now offers to Shimon as follows: Ad chamesh shnin, for the first 5 years, I'm going to remove the crops, enjoy the benefits without deduction at all. Once 5 years are up, I will take account, I will assess the true value of all the payers, and I will apply it to your loan. So it looks like a sharecropper. A couple of years I get it all myself, and the rest, right, is yours. So that removes any impression of ribis. It's a fair arrangement, right, like a sharecropper. getting a cut instead of a percentage of each year. We're making sort of a multi-year arrangement. A couple of years I get, a couple of years you get. That's one version of kitzusa. And as we said, there's machlekes, whether this is mutter or aser. Rabbi says, one says mutter, one says aser, right? Now we have another version. Some say that kol b'lo nechiyaisa aser. Even this is certainly aser, because he's not really deducting anything the first couple of years. So it appears like he's getting it, as ribis, as a fee for his money. Rather, what is considered the kitzusa, which is mutter even for Talmud Chacham, the Amar Lei, he says like this: Ad chamesh shnin achilna b'nechiyaisa. The initial 5-year arrangement is as follows: I take the peiros b'nechiyaisa. Whatever I get, I deduct from the loan. I apply it as a credit towards the loan. Past 5 years, it's all yours, Mr. Loiva. So for the first 5 years, it's a set amount per year, right? Whatever they make up, $100 per year, I'm going to apply it towards the loan. As we said before, both sides are taking a risk because the exact amount that he's going to take off the field is unpredictable. So that's okay for the first 5 years. Past 5 years, whatever I take off the field, all the pairs, the exact amount will be assessed and applied towards the loan. So, since on the one hand, the first 5 years, he is deducting a set amount, on top of the fact that past 5 years, he's giving it all back to the loiva, so it doesn't look like it diminishes that ribis impression. So again, what is kitzusa? We have two versions. Either, right, first 5 years, I take it all, past which you take it all, right? First 5 years, the malva takes it all. Past 5 years, the loiva keeps all the pairs applied towards the loan. And version 2 explains it differently. The first 5 years, I deduct a certain amount, right? A certain, preset amount is deducted from that loan every year. Past which, after 5 years, we go ahead and we assess the exact amount of income, and that's applied towards the loan. And now, what is the status of kitzusa for Talmud Chacham? So we have machlekes, Rav Acha, Ravina. Some say aser, some say mutter. Manda aser b'kamaisa, shor b'basraisa. So the opinion that held that even kitzusa is a problematic arrangement for a Talmud Chacham because it still smells from ribis. Now, if we hold that, if we define kitzusa as being the first of the two arrangements, we have the two versions. If we go with the first version, shor b'basraisa. So even if you hold that kitzusa is aser, that's because it's the first version of kitzusa, which is closer to ribis than not, and therefore it's aser. But shari b'basraisa. But even that opinion will agree that the second version of kitzusa, which was that I never get a free ride at all. First 5 years, the malva I deduct a set amount and apply it towards the loan, and past which it's all towards the loan. That's certainly mutter, because it's so removed from ribis. It looks like a fair deal. It looks like it makes sense, right? There's not much, issues here. However, if you hold that the true definition of kitzusa is as per version 2, and still you hold that it's aser, well, if that's aser, then what? Give me another option of mashkanta that's mutter. How could a Talmud Chacham ever make a mashkanta arrangement? I mean, you've taken the most extreme case, which is the least problematic one, and you've forbade it. So, heichi shari l'meichal. How could a Talmud Chacham ever do the mashkanta arrangement? Says the Gemara, there's still one option left. Shari. Shari ki mashkanta de surah. Oh, he can employ the mashkanta de surah arrangement. So in Surah, they did like this. The Kasvi Bahachi. So they would make a document as follows. Shimon borrows $1 million from Reuven, then hands him a field as a mashkin, and he writes like this. B'mishlam shnaya ilain. As soon as these years are up, the 10-year term is up, teipuk aro double kesef. At that point, the aro, this property, leaves the possession of the malva and goes back to the loiva without a penny paid. Loans up, everything's gone. So now it's okay for Reuven to have the peiros all throughout these 10 years because it doesn't even give the impression of a hava. It's almost no loan going on here. It's like Reuven purchased the field for 10 years. Whether he gains on the deal, loses on the deal, whether he gets a lot of bananas, a little, it's an outright sale. True, it started off as a loan. He lent Shimon $1 million, but now that Shimon responds by offering his field, which Reuven will have now for 10 years, after which it goes back to Shimon free of charge, loan canceled, it appears like Reuven really bought the field for those $1 million. And now whatever he has throughout that period, whether it's a lot, it's a little, fruitful years or unfruitful years, the deal is fair and square and there's no issue of ribbis. Okay, bottom line, we discussed the sugya of mashkanta, where a fellow offers a field, offers property to a lender for the time being. There's mashkanta ba'asra delay masalki, where the borrower has no right to go and redeem that field until the term is up, until due date shows up. At that point, he has a right to either, have the lender keep the field, or he can buy it back. So it's like an outright sale. For the next 10 years, it's like an outright sale to Reuven, and Reuven can just take the peiros at will. We have Asra de Mesalki, where you could be Mesalik. You have a right to remove him off the field anytime you come up with money. That runs you into a ribbis issue, being that Reuven is benefiting from that field all along, which is deemed like ribbis, a fee that he's getting paid for loaning money. So how do we get around that? So we discussed the idea of nechiyaisa, a deduction system. We discussed a more robust deduction system, kitsusa, which is perhaps mut even for Talmud Chacham. And finally, we have a system which is certainly okay on all ends, which is called mashkanta desura. So basically, at the end of that 10-year period, the loan is considered all paid up, which allows us to treat this arrangement like just a bona fide sale without any ribbis issues. Says the Gemara Papa, they both concurred as follows. So if a fellow receives a mashkin, and it's a place where you could be misalik him off that field, so it's not really considered his. It's sort of just a temporary hold on that field. So now let's say Reuven, who had this mashkin, passed away and passed it on to his kids. And Reuven happened to have his own Baal Chayiv, his bank that was after him. So typically, a Baal Chayiv cannot collect from Yisayim, from kids, due to their father's loan. Unless there's karka that was handed down from the father. He can tap into the estate of the father, because a father's estate is like an areib. It's like a guarantor for his own personal obligations, right? And when a person borrows, his property becomes liable, right? The bank can now access his properties, sort of a lien on his properties. So when he was around, the lien is applied to his properties and to anything that he owns. Anything that he owns is sort of there to secure that loan. But once he passes on, Rashi explains, the person's metaltalin are no longer bound to his loans because that's not really the item of the lien. People lend money; they're not expecting to use metaltalin as a security for a loan. It's rather the mindset is rather that property will be used to secure and back up the loan. So when there's property around, so even if it gets handed to the kids, that property is still the subject of the bank's lien to the father, so he has a right to take that. Now let's say the father had a mashkin, ba'asra de masalki, in a place where it's not really deemed his because at any time, any point in time, the Leiva can come take it away. So it's not really considered his property, and when he passes away, Ein Bal Chayiv Gai Be'emenu. The father's Bal Chayiv. Reuven's Bal Chayiv could not come take it from the kids because it was never really his. And likewise, Reuven's Bechor, firstborn, doesn't have a right to take a double portion. That only applies to something which was owned by the father, not something which was sort of, temporarily given to his possession. And when Shemitah arrives, Shemitah typically, cancels loans. Well, in this case as well, even if a lender took a mashkin of this type, it's not considered, the loan is not considered collected already. If it would be considered collected, like if you take a real mashkin, right? If you, Rashi says, if you take a metaltalin, you take a car as a mashkin, so the lender sort of assumes partial, like an ownership, assumes ownership of that item. Rashi brings a Gemara that we learned that the malva is like a sort of an owner. He owns that item, so it's like the loan had been paid up already, and Shemitah can't cancel that. It's been paid up, but here it's not been paid up because the field that he has is only sort of temporarily his, a temporary hold on the field, and therefore Shvius can still deactivate that loan which had not been collected. That's because it's asra de misalki. Right? But if it's a place where uba asra de loy misalki, place where you cannot employ this type of system, you can't go ahead and extricate this piece of land from the malva until the term is up. So now it is considered like his. It's like he purchased a field for X amount of years, and therefore everything switches, everything reverses. Bal chayiv goyve menu. So the malva's bal chayiv can come collect from that property even after his passing. And his kid gets double portion. And Shmias does not affect this loan, which is deemed paid up. Right, in a place where they are misalik, the malva, as soon as the loiva gets his hands on money, so once the loiva comes around to repossess his field, he can force the malva off the field, even if the malva already picked the dates have already dropped off the tree and landed on the budya, the mats. Right, the fellow places mats around the palm trees to allow the dates to plop down. So even those dates, the loiva will take, because look, I want my field back with everything. But if the malva had done hagbah, he already put the dates into baskets, so kanoni, he made a kinyan, it's his, it's too late, it's no longer relating to the field. I mean, you can take the field back, but not something which I already picked and took home. Now, according to the opinion that holds that when a buyer places something, has something in his kli, in his container, which is sitting in the property of the seller, right? We don't consider it still on the seller's domain. Rather, it's already in my domain, because it's sitting in my container. So that's a kinyan. So kana lekech, the buyer can be kinyan in that fashion. So if that's the case, afilu deloy agbehinu besisna kanano. So in this case, where the budya, these mats, belong to the malva, belong to Reuven, right? So the dates that dropped into his kalim, into his containers, are deemed his, despite the fact that it's sitting on Shimon, the real owner's field. It's kelav shaloikech b'shus meicher, so that's tantamount to a kinyan, and it's like kinyan chatzar, it's like in his possession because it's in his containers, and therefore Shimon, although he has right to take his field back, but not those dates. Says the Gemara, okay, we have two sort of systems, right? Asra de Masalki and Asra de Loy Masalki. Again, it means like this, that Shimon borrowed $1 million from Reuven, and Shimon handed his property to Reuven as a mashkoin. Asra de Masalki means that any time throughout the next 10 years, right, the term of the loan, anytime throughout that period, he has a right to regain possession of that field by buying out Reuven. Asher D'lei Masalki would require Shimon to wait patiently until his 10-year term is up, and then he has a right to pay out the loan and get his field back. So now, Pshita. In the following case, it's pretty clear what the halach would be. Ba'asr de Masalki, in a place where they are Masalik, the lender says, you know what, I would like to cancel your rights. I'm not willing to relinquish my rights over this field. I want to have it, I'm going to start working on it, developing it. I want to have it for, set amount of years. Does that work? Yeah. Look, he said he's not leaving the field, and he's lending money to Shimon on that condition. And Rashi says it's like a kinyan because he's like sort of paying money for this. It's a kinyan. Karka is nikna through kesef, right? So even though it's sort of like a temporary sale, it's only 10 years, but when he lays out that money to Shimon, he's doing it with this in mind, and it's a kinyan. That's it. It's done. It's binding. What about the other way around? Ela ba'asra delay masalik. What if we're in a place where you can't be masalik the malva? So it's a done deal, right? Va'amar mistalikna. But the fellow says, you know what? I'm willing to relinquish my hold of this field as soon as you're able to come up with your money. So he's only sort of taking it in a very limited way. What's the halacha? He committed to do this verbally, right? It was a verbal commitment. Is that enough to grant Shimon rights to now remove Reuven off the field when he's able to? Does Shimon have to make a kinyan from Reuven to commit himself to this or not? Rav Papa Amar you don't need to make a kinyan. Basically, Reuven acknowledged that he's limiting his hold on the field. I'm only taking it as long as you, right? Rav Sheshes Brei Rabbi Amar, you need to make a kinyan, otherwise words are nothing. The halach is that in fact, Amar, now let's say we're in a place where you can be masalik, which basically means that as soon as Shimon comes up with the money, Reuven has to leave the field, right? So now, at what point does Reuven have to vacate? Amar, let's say Shimon is coming in saying, look, Ezel ba'isi zuzi. I'm about to go and, withdraw my money from the account. Please stop eating the, he has a right to say it. Lo yachol. Reuven has to stop right there because the money's available and his term ended. That's it. But let's say Ezel va'atrach ba'isi zuzi. He doesn't have money in the bank. He says, look, I got some friends. I'm going to put it together for you. So does Reuven have to take him seriously? Does he have to halt? Or can he just wait around till keep on eating until it happens? Ravina Amar Achel, he can continue eating. No, he can't. He has to stop right there because the fellow is purporting to have money available. I mean, it's pretty close by. You just give me another couple, right? So the rishus that Reuven had in the field terminated. Rav Kahana, Rav Papa, Rav Asher loy achli ben Achiyaisa. So these three Amoraim never were willing to actually partake in this type of mashkanta arrangement, even ben Achiyaisa, even by way of this applying this deduction system to apply a certain set amount per year towards the loan. They didn't want to do that. On the other hand, Ravina Achal ben Achiyaisa, he would partake in a mashkanta ben Achiyaisa arrangement. Amar Mazuch, my time, why? My time of the Mandach ben Achiyaisa. Why did Ravina allow himself to do this? You know what? See, what's the catch here? The point is that Reuven may end up gaining on the deal, but he may end up losing. Like we said, it's unpredictable. We don't know exactly how much he's going to make off the field. So, it's a fair system. Look, I'm going to deduct X amount per year and apply it towards the loan, and it's anybody's guess what's going to happen. And he allowed it. Why? It's very similar to the Sadei Achuza arrangement which we find in the Torah, which entails a fellow who redeemed a field off of the Hegdish. Somebody donated an estate, a fellow comes along and redeems it. right? Buys it off the Hegdish, and the halacha is, it's based on the Psukim, a certain set amount per year. A sela plus a little more per year. Until, based on how many years are left till Yovel, when he's going to have to give up the field back to Hegdish. But bottom line is, we're setting a pretty set rate. We're establishing a set system. You give X amount per year, which gives you a right to access the field with all its chances of gain or risk. That's a fair deal. Right? This field, this estate. Lav afagav dekachal perituva. Despite the fact that he may end up gaining a great deal of Paris. Still, what happens? How much does he have to lay out? Amar Achman Torah says, all he gives is 4 zuzim, a sela. Hachanami Lishna here as well. As long as the Malva is willing to deduct a fair amount per year, that's okay. There's always a suffix. He might not gain it, might end up losing. That's fine. So that's why it would be okay. Umada Asar. But the conflicting opinion, the other shita held, no, you can't do this. There's still some sort of ribis element if he ends up gaining. You can't compare it to the stei achuza. You know why? He tells you like this: stei achuza hegdishi. Technically, that field belongs to hegdish. You're not lending, you're not borrowing. It's hegdish proper. And the Torah says, you know what? You want to take it from hegdish, you have to redeem it. Rachmana and the Torah ukmei apidyan established a set rate. This is how much you pay to redeem the field. Okay, so this is what it is. You're not borrowing, you're not lending. But over here by the mashkanta, it's part of a loan arrangement. Shimon borrowed from Reuben, and now he's giving him a right to his field. And he might end up gaining a lot. So although he's willing to deduct a token amount per year, you're running the risk of ribis if he ends up gaining on the deal. It's part of a loan arrangement. Ribis and looks like ribis. Oh, okay, so we began with the story of the relatives and the stipulation to apply a buyback option to a field, and then that runs into issue of ribis because it's not truly a sale, but really it's avak ribis. And then we moved on to a case of mashkanta. Mashkanta, the loy misalki is not an issue of ribis. Mashkanta the misalki can be an issue of ribis, although only in ribis d'Rabbanan. The true way to approach the mashkanta, the misalki, would be either nachyaisa, which deducts a set amount, which is a workable system according to some, or doing a kitsusa system, which is even a lesser ribis issue. And finally, we have mashkanta de surah, which is viewed as a perfect sale. Basically, it's yours until the term of the loan is up, and then I get it back. It's like selling it and then reselling it back, which is perfectly legal. We discussed the status of mashkanta, the misalki, the lay misalki, vis-a-vis a balchayv, a bechor, and shmita. What happens when the loiva claims to have money? At what point does the malva have to vacate? We had a story regarding Amiroim. Some did, and some didn't agree to go along with the mashkanta system. All the best to you, and atzlacha.